Oh, hi guys. Welcome to the latest episode of Cricket Draft Insight. Just want to talk about a few cricket related things today, potential changes on the horizon in our sport, and I want to talk about the pros and cons of these, okay? First one is retired out. Like we are starting to see this a lot, okay? Tactical decision, batters retiring out. So they're out, they're not pretending to be injured, they're not out, they're out, they can't go back in. Okay, a batter's batting, the perception from the dugout is they're too slow, they need to get a move on, and they send a big hitter in. Okay, now obviously we're talking about professional cricket here, but hear me out. I'm going to talk about myself playing cricket, right? So my best performance ever in a T20 game. Team was in trouble. Okay, 60 odd for free. When I went in, 70 for four, and we're chasing about 140. Right. I historically was quite an obdurate player. Okay, that occasion, I was able to weather the storm a bit. Somebody alongside me was batting a bit quicker, and then towards the end of the innings, a few overs away from, maybe 16 overs or so, just when I needed to, I upped the tempo. I hit a couple of boundaries, back-to-back boundaries. I scored 14 not out. That was my highest score in T20 cricket, and I walked off very happy. We won the game with about an over to spare. Okay, so had I been hauled off about 30 not out, and then maybe we won the game. Yeah, okay, I'd have been quite happy, obviously. But to have that thrill of seeing the team over the line, was fantastic. And if we go into an example here, the example on the screen, okay, doesn't show the full details here, but this is Xavier Bell, okay, exciting player in New Zealand. So in that game against Otago, where he scored nine off, I don't know, 13 or something, he and Jeet Raval were both retired out. Now, I think this was the game that Kugelheim, I'm not going to go clicking into it because it'd take forever clicking in and out. I think this was the game where Kugelheim, I don't really want to talk about him, but he's got smashed some runs at the end, okay? And they won. A great tactical decision, okay? But actually, the next game where Xavier Bell hit that 53 not out, I think that came off 17, 18 balls. So I would ask, if you're going to retire a player out, right, just because they're not going 1,000 miles an hour from the get go, how does that player develop? Call me old fashioned, but get their eye in and then kick on. Maybe we look at power plays and opening batters and we expect them just to go from the get go. But sometimes pitches are a bit trickier or whatever. Just because Kugelheim scored those quick runs at the end, maybe Bell would have done the same as he seemingly did in the next game. Of course, maybe Bell, by being retired out, has gone out in the next game and said, I've just got to go and smash this around. So there's pros and cons for player development. Obviously, by the time a player gets to professional cricket, you expect them to have, developed and know the game and what have you. People will say move with the times and such like. Tactical decisions shouldn't be a big deal. People keep comparing things to baseball. I don't know how it works in baseball. But for me, I'd kind of like the batter to be backed to kick on, okay? Because you see this. David Milan in the Bangladesh Premier League earlier, right? I was watching that. It was all over the place early on. And as we know with David Milan, he gets in and then there's an over 3 4s in a row. And he ended up 78 off. He was like 13 off 26 or something, and he ended up 78 off 49 or something. Okay. So I'd like to back the batter to up the tempo themselves rather than retiring out. Now, I know this is old fashioned and not how you're supposed to think about this, but I'd like to be not out. Okay. If I was a batter, I'd rather just have a go and get out. Right. The fact that these batters are retiring out, call me pedantic, but it bugs me in their stats. Okay. Just retire. Why can't you just retire not out? Why does it have to be retired out? Retire not out. And then if they want to go back in, well, why not let them? So if I had my way, fine. If you want to retire a batter out, okay. But I actually would have it retire not out. Okay. But those are my thoughts on retired out. Just let me see if I can figure out how to do this. Not sure. Can I share a different? Hopefully, I can share a different thing here, just for a bit of variety. What do I want to talk about next? Oh, okay. Let's move to designated batter. Right, designated batter. Now, I'll be honest, I read this to begin with, and I was like, what? I couldn't even get my head around it. But so I think basically somebody's just going to bat, but then they don't have to field. So somebody else can field, right? But only if you name a designated batter does this happen. You could still just name a playing 11. Okay. So the early suggestion is that this is, I don't know, Chris Lynn, they were talking about, somebody else. They just don't have to field. Okay. So they don't get injured, but they can still be fit enough to bat rather than getting injured because they're running around in the field. And it prolong their careers. Okay. So what's going to happen with this? Obviously, we've had subs. I don't really watch the IPL. Impact sub, I always remember. Was Solanke the first sub? There used to be some subs, wasn't there? And it just like teams would pick an extra batter. Some leagues have a sub, an impact sub. Whether it's worked, it's chopped and changed, hasn't worked. Anyway. Okay, well, here's a pro, right? So this is just in the Big Bash. Australia, you're part of the Perth squad and you fly all the way to Hobart. 14-player squad. Well, technically, 12 players get to play in some way, okay? Rather than just 11, you fly all that way, you miss out, okay? So more players get to be involved. The thing is, you're also going to have subfielders. Subfielders are still going to happen for injury or just rotation or whatever. Player statistics. So it's going to count in both players' stats, right? So if you're just a fielder, it's going to count as an appearance. What I'm thinking about, right? Obviously, I've mentioned Ethan Brooks a few times. He is a good fielder, and he's fielded very well in the Bangladesh Premier League. He hasn't set the world on fire or at times had much opportunity with the bat, certainly with the ball. So say a team signs Ethan Brooks. Say Ethan Brooks got signed to the Big Bash, right? And he's a good fielder. But we know he can bat and bowl too. But if you are a good fielder, I feel like there's a risk of teams saying, well, they're the best fielder, so they'll just be the fielder. And then, of course, they don't get to develop their batting or bowling. Okay? So, yeah, designated batter, designated fielder. What I would say is if you're the designated fielder, you've got to be a good fielder, okay? I'm going to be really silly again. When I played cricket, I had my moments with the ball, frustrations with the bat. I was a good fielder, okay? And I think that contributed to me being in the team, right? So if you're the professional cricketer, if you're the one who's playing as designated fielder, my opinion is you've got to set the standard, right? So I feel like this could elevate the standard of fielding. Okay, we could see some people, maybe they do become specialist fielders. That's been some of the criticism of T10, of course, that somebody bat down 7-8 don't bowl. The person who is the designated fielder, which presumably ain't going to be Max Bryant based on what I saw the other day, has got to be a very good fielder. Okay, watching the Big Bash, Lachlan Shaw. It's interesting. There was a dropped catch today. Was it Usman Khan in the Bangladesh Premier League? It was just awful, right? It was just technically horrific. Whereas in England, we have like Johnny Bairstow and Sam Billings are wicket keepers, but they're two probably the best fielders. I think there are some others. And like I mentioned, Lachlan Shaw, from what I've seen, is a good fielder, even though he's been a wicket keeper. But anyway, designated batter, designated bowler. And then let's move on to one more similar themed thing, which is, if I can figure out how to share the screen again, I nearly pressed end stream there. Right. Now, this one, that's not very clear. Where's it gone? ICC to trial injury subs in first-class cricket. Sorry, bear with me here because Shield, I think. And go back to New Zealand. Certainly in their T20 competition, I'm not sure if this is the same in the others, they already named 12 players. So they pre-select, I believe it's a potential concussion sub or maybe just injury sub. They already named 12 players. Now, I don't think that sub doesn't count as playing a game unless they came in. Okay. But they're already naming 12 players. I'm not sure if that's how they've done it in Australia. But basically, somebody gets injured, they can be replaced. Now, I don't know the exacts, like who's managing this. Obviously, a lot of people say, well, this is open to abuse, like for like replacements and such like. But it's being touched upon. This could come into the county championship, right? Now, just thinking from a cricket draft perspective, right? That's a bit of an admin nightmare, isn't it? Even designated batter and fielder, and then injury subs. I do remember a year or two ago, I think Sam Hain had been injured and he came on, I think as a concussion sub, but he actually came on as a player. I don't know. Does that make sense? I'm sure he came into the game. I don't know if somebody went away, but he's like an official replacement, but he only came on like the last session of the game or something. But anyway, so designated batter and fielder, and then injuries. So, if you're picking a cricket draft team, I'm thinking out loud here, but your player just ends up being the designated fielder, or your sub does really well, or you have injury play. I'm just thinking there's some situations there, some scenarios where it's going to be, whoa, how do we manage this? Okay. I touched upon me playing. I got injured playing once. I broke my finger. I soldiered on and I opened the batting. Anyway, just some thoughts on a few sort of similar things and a few things that have caught my attention. Retired out. I can handle it. I just think it should be managed slightly differently. Designated batter fielder. I actually don't necessarily mind because I'm really into fielding. I just don't want, if some players are going to become specialist fielders, you've got to let them bat and bowl at times too. And then the injury subs, I'm mainly thinking from a cricket draft perspective, it could be a bit tricky. But we'll see what happens in future competitions. Anyway, sorry, I've done this video the lazy way again. Live stream, not live as per usual, but a live stream, because then I don't have to edit it. That's helpful. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Had a few views and a lot of feedback on my last live stream. People, hopefully getting excited. I mean, we're still a bit off, but for county championship and cricket draft. Thanks for all the feedback. Thanks if you made it through 12 minutes of this. Have a lovely weekend. How's that?